Hey, what's up guys, Will here for GSM Arena. Samsung has been making headlines lately with its flagship phones, but here on the opposite end of the spectrum we have this, the Galaxy A12, which wants to deliver the Samsung experience on a budget. For an entry-level price, what are you actually getting here though? Let's find out in our full review. The Galaxy A12 is an entry-level device, and as you'd expect, its features aren't as competitive as most phones we normally review. However, devices like this do have an audience. Some people just want the basics and don't want to spend a whole lot on a phone. The A12 is built from solid plastic, which actually looks and feels pretty good. The back is textured with diagonal stripes, which adds some extra grip. Rather than having a rear panel and a frame, this is more of a unibody sort of construction. On the front is a 6.5-inch display with a notch for the selfie cam. This is a PLS LCD, not an AMOLED like most of Samsung's phones, and the resolution is just 720p. It's nice to have a large screen, but this combination means that the pixel density is pretty low, just 264 ppi. Look closely at things like text, and you'll notice some graininess here. It's also a bit noticeable when watching content. It's not the end of the world though. Contrast here is alright as far as LCDs go, and colors are sort of accurate, though there's no way to tweak them manually. And brightness is nothing special here. We measured 400 nits maximum with the slider, and a small boost to around 470 nits in auto mode. For audio, the Galaxy A12 has a single bottom firing loudspeaker. With its below average loudness score, it's one of the quieter handsets in its class. It doesn't stand out with quality either, with absent lows and muted treble. At least you do have a 3.5mm jack for plugging in traditional headphones with, and FM radio support. Waking up and unlocking the phone is done with a side-mounted fingerprint reader, which doubles as the power button. It works pretty well. And storage is expandable through the dedicated microSD slot, on top of the 32, 64, or 128 gigs built in. The Galaxy A12's interface is Android 10 with Samsung's OneUI 2.5 on top. We don't have the new Android 11 for now. However, OneUI is quite consistent between devices, and its features here are quite familiar. You can keep your apps in an app drawer, and while there are some proprietary Samsung apps, like the Gallery, web browser, and file manager, most features are handled through Google's apps. You are missing a couple of things here compared to some other Samsung phones. There's no always-on display since this isn't an AMOLED, and you don't get the Edge panel shortcuts either. Under the hood of the Galaxy A12 is a Mediatek Helio P35 chipset, built on a 12nm process. It's not very competitive, trailing behind in the charts as far as CPU benchmarks go. For example, the Poco M3, which runs on a Snapdragon 662, scores around 70% higher in CPU tests. The A12 does hold its own in GPU performance though, thanks to its lower res display. In regular use, performance on the A12 isn't terrible, but we did experience hiccups from time to time. And gaming isn't really a great experience here. One area in which this device is quite competitive is battery life. The A12 has a sizable 5000 mAh battery, and was able to score an outstanding endurance rating of 123 hours in our proprietary tests. This is one of the more attractive features of this phone. With a screen-on time of around 15 hours of video playback or talk time upwards of 30 hours, you can use the A12 all day without having to worry about running out of juice. Once the battery does get low though, it will take a while to top back up. The phone comes bundled with a 15-watt fast charger, and with it we were only able to charge a dead battery to 20% in half an hour. Now let's go over the cameras. The A12 has a quad camera setup, featuring a 48MP quad Bayer main camera, a 5MP ultra-wide cam, a 2MP macro cam, and a depth sensor. Photos from the main camera come out in 12MP, and they are sharp, with relatively high levels of detail and minimal noise. Dynamic range is quite wide, and colors look true to life. The main cam can also snap portraits in live focus mode. These are good, with fairly competent separation around the subject. The subject's face is well exposed, but since there's no HDR, take care not to end up with a blown background. 5-megapixel shots from the ultra-wide camera have a 123-degree field of view and have wide dynamic range. They are quite noisy though, and don't have a lot of detail. There's also no distortion correction available, so objects near the edges of the frame will come out a bit curved. The macro camera is used to take close-up photos, which are good if you don't look at them too closely. The 2-megapixel resolution just doesn't hold all that much detail. In low light, the main cam's performance isn't spectacular. You get a decent amount of detail and well-preserved colors, but the dynamic range is pretty narrow, with blown highlights and dark shadows, and the images are quite noisy. There is no night mode available on the A12 either. The ultra-wide struggles even more when the light is low. The exposure is quite dark, and you get plenty of softness and noise, and narrow dynamic range. Selfies are taken with the 8-megapixel front-facing cam, and these aren't too bad. If there's enough light, you get good detail, conservative colors, and decent dynamic range with the help of HDR. As far as video recording goes, the Galaxy A12 is quite basic. You can only record in up to 1080p at 30 FPS, and there's no stabilization. Footage from the main cam is about average for a phone in this class. There's not much fine detail and there's heavy sharpening. But there's hardly any noise either, and colors are accurate, and dynamic range is decent. The ultra-wide shoots video that is okay for this budget class. It's not super sharp, but there's no noise, and you get fairly wide dynamic range and likable colors. So that's the Galaxy A12. It's got a snazzy textured design, excellent battery life, and a decent camera setup with an ultra-wide, all for a budget price. However, it's worth considering that other budget champions from Realme, Xiaomi, and Poco are out there, in some cases even cheaper, and they improve upon some of the A12's shortcomings, like its low-res screen and underpowered chipset. So overall, unless you're dead set on getting a Galaxy phone, it's probably worth shopping around to get more bang for your buck. Thanks for watching guys, stay safe, and see you on the next one.